Namaskar. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Editorial Edge, the daily news analysis. I am Bhuvan Jha, and today is the 16th of June. So, firstly, my apologies. We are slightly delayed, but that was the situation was not in my hands. So, I'm glad that we have started. And so, once again, I welcome each one of you, those who are joining me live in this special daily news analysis, and those who will be watching this during the course of the day and further on. Hi Bulbul, how are you? Good morning everyone. So today's topic is essentially to do with reforms. Again, from the mains perspective, reforms is something that you need to be absolutely crystal clear about. If you're going to criticize a particular institution or an organ or a body, you need to know exactly what are they doing wrong. And only then can you criticize them in a fair and unbiased manner. Which is why today in the topic we will take a look at the international financial institutions, essentially the multilateral development banks. Good morning Rajan, how are you? Welcome. So we will take a look at the multilateral development banks, okay? Essentially IMF, World Bank, all of those banks essentially, what are they doing wrong? Okay, because clearly they haven't done everything right. There's a lot of criticism, fair criticism in fact, against them. So we'll take a look at that, and thereafter we will, in the second part of the discussion, we'll take a look at sustainable aviation fuel, SAF, okay? Because SAF is again to do with, blending of oil. In fact, those of you who probably were there in the class yesterday evening at 9 p.m. where I discussed the problem of greenwashing by international airlines. So we had briefly touched upon sustainable aviation fuel. However, we'll take a detailed look at what exactly is SAF, what is the problem, what are the risks, what are the challenges, all that will be done. Okay. So once again, before I start, well, here is my Telegram channel. I'll spell it out. It's t.me/Bhuvan StudyIQ. Or you can scan this barcode and join me in my Telegram channel. We are in the process of consolidation, and we will be beginning a completely renewed thrust and focused energy in making sure that those who join me in this particular channel benefit the most when it comes to current affairs. Okay, good morning, please come, welcome. Okay, once again, for those of you who are watching this live, well, this daily news analysis, Editorial Edge, it takes a look at one or two particular points of news, pieces of news, and we go in depth in the particular topic, okay? The whole focus is on traveling from prelims to interview and covering all the tangents that exist, because if you prepare that way, you don't need to worry about if you read any other article on it. You already have the foundational basis of understanding. Okay. So rather than going after the width of articles covered, I intend on going in the depth of a particular article. Okay. Because eventually you will cover each and every article, each and every important piece of news that is there, but you would have covered it in depth. Good morning, Chilaka. How are you, Vaishnaviji? Welcome. All right. So this is it. Once again, daily news analysis every morning, 8 a.m. Today only we are little delayed. Satyajit, welcome. Okay. And obviously, if you join this group, you have all of these that is extended to you, that is of use to you. We give you PDFs, questions will be now being posted. In fact, I did post a poll on the Telegram channel asking if whether students wanted a 1-hour session or a 2-hour session. The poll is still open, so if you are a part of the group, may I implore you, go ahead and vote. And if you're not a part of the group but you enjoy the classes, well, firstly join the group and then make sure you vote. Okay, voting is a right, use it. It's all democracy in action here. Okay, fine. So these are the two articles that I'm looking at. Reform of multilateral financial institutions, essentially to do with IMF, World Bank, okay, and the rest, the host of other ones that are there. Fine. And then we'll take a look at sustainable aviation fuel, which the introduction was done in the last class, the evening class, last evening at 9 p.m. If you go onto the StudyIQ English channel, you will find that I had discussed about airlines greenwashing, that whether green flying can indeed become a reality or is it like an outright lie that they are selling us. Okay. Good morning, Vishal the Tiger. Good name. I like the name. So we discussed that, but today we'll take an in-depth look. Okay. Understand what exactly is sustainable aviation fuel. And thereafter, as we always do, we look at mains and prelims questions. So get prepared. First question coming your way. So let's look at this. आर्टिकल बताइयो. अरे आर्टिकल यार ये जो है ना तुम्हारा, ये वाला जो आर्टिकल है, दिस हैज बीन कवर्ड इन ORF. ठीक है. साई चंदना, गुड मॉर्निंग, वेलकम. ओके. सो आई विल सजेस्ट दैट यू पे अटेंशन. आर्टिकल तो आप समझ ही लोगे. So let's look at this question now. A quantum increase in development finance is urgently required to address the major global challenge, especially climate crisis and poverty. So it's essentially asking for a quantum increase, that there needs to be a renewed thrust in these multilateral institutions so that they best serve the interests. And how do they serve that? By addressing the two major problems of this era. One, climate financing. Okay. Climate financing, besides the green fund and all that we know, there is a massive responsibility on these institutions. The Bretton Woods architecture that they carry with them, well, they have all the systems in place, there is an architecture in place. But in spite of that, there is no clear method of climate financing, say by the World Bank or IMF. So we'll take a look at that. Hello, dance floor, how are you? Good morning. Okay. And we'll also take a look at whether they have done enough to ameliorate poverty. Okay, because these are the two main challenges, say in the year 2023. So we'll take a look at that. One other question from the mains perspective that you should consider is whether the international financial architecture is short-sighted. Okay, is it crisis-prone and bears no relation to the economic reality of today? Comment. Quantum increase is a massive increase, that you need a lot of increase. That this funding, the funding level, if it is right now say at 100 rupees, what is essentially required is that you give at least 10,000. So you see, you are looking at a quantum increase. So a lot of money is needed if they have to go ahead and comprehensively address, say, climate change plus poverty. How can they do that? Okay. And well, let me know the answer to this. The Bridgetown Initiative. Okay. Bridgetown, if you know the name, well, it's in the Caribbean. It's a capital in the Caribbean, one of the nations, Barbados, I believe. Okay. So what is the Bridgetown Initiative? What is it seeking to do? Is it looking to reform AIIB and WTO, IMF and WTO, IMF and World Bank, or World Bank and WTO? So we'll look at this. If you know the answer, let me know in the chat very quickly. All right. Let's go ahead and understand now the multilateral development banks. Essentially, we are talking about two main institutions in this class. One is the International Monetary Fund and the other is World Bank. Okay. So why are we talking about reforms right now? In the year 2023, what has happened suddenly? So if you look at it, the altruistic claims, what is altruism? That I am donating, I am helping. That sense of helping is called altruism. Okay. So these claims made by these countries, the northern community, the global north, about global economic cooperation are not credible anymore. That the credibility is indeed hurt. Okay. Now why, I'll tell you 2-3 points that you should quickly note down. If you're writing this, quickly note down 2-3 points as to where the problem lies. So when you look at say the IMF and World Bank, okay. Now if you have paid attention in the past or if you have been reading your newspapers, you will find a common theme firstly. One, that the chief of IMF, the managing director of IMF, is always a person from the European Union. Okay. There was this French one, Christine Lagarde was there. So how is it that European Union always becomes the president of IMF? At the same time, World Bank is always an American citizen. Okay. You see the problem here? This has the name international in it and yet is completely European in outlook. Okay. This has the name world in it and well, like American soccer, no? That they play American soccer and they call it World Championship of Soccer. When actually that form of soccer is only played in America. The rest of the world follows football. It's the same thing. They call it World Bank, but then eventually it is an American citizen who is leading it. So what's the point? So underrepresentation is one of the most credible criticisms of IMF and World Bank. That they are not holistic and inclusive in their approach. Okay. That it is a system that was created by the Western powers and now is dominated by them. And the rest of the world, us, global south, we are just supposed to follow whatever they say. How long can that charade work? You can fool all of the people all of the time, but you can't do that. Eventually, you will get caught. Okay. So this is what is happening. Underrepresentation, or the fact that it is not inclusive in its outlook. Number one, first thing, major criticism of the IMF and the World Bank. Good, good, very nice. Dance floor, Bulbul, excellent answers, good. Okay, so let's look at this now. According to the 2023, the latest report by the way, Financing for Sustainable Development report, okay, 52 low and middle income developing economies are either in debt distress or at high risk of debt, okay, and they account for 40% of the world's poorest people. Imagine this, that in spite of having such systems, World Bank, IMF, big names, in spite of that, here you have 40% of the global population that is at risk of their countries or their nations or their organizations defaulting on debt or are under risk of debt. Okay. And so once debt happens, what exactly happens, please understand this very quickly. So IMF and World Bank, for example, you are a country that is in debt. Okay. For example, I assume you are a country who is in debt. You come to me, IMF, asking for money. Okay. Now, what I am going to do is straight away tell you, yes, I will give you money, but then it will come with some conditions attached. Okay. So look at this. It's a very logical thing, guys. There is not a lot of mugging that you need to do in this topic. Okay. Look at this here. So you come to me. Okay. The country comes to IMF. IMF says, well, I am going to give you money, but then there are going to be some conditions. Essentially, the conditions are to do with neoliberalism. Now, what is neoliberalism? Neoliberalism is to do with free market. Okay. It is to do with liberalization, privatization. Essentially, what we went through in 1991. Okay. So, IMF says, okay, I'll give you money, but then you need to change something structural in your economy so that you do not come back to me again asking for money. Till there, the conditionality may be accepted. Fine. Okay. I understand. I'm coming to ask you money, so you have certain conditions. Fine. But then the problem arises when after this, the IMF mandates that, well, you are going to cut on your public spending. Okay. You are going to cut your public spending. Now, this is where the problem arises, guys. The moment IMF forces a country to scale down their public spending. Public spending is what? Investing in education, investing in health, investing in social services. The moment that happens, you have essentially put a huge population at risk. Not just the population, you are also putting industries of that country at risk. Okay. So, two very minor examples I'll tell you. For example, in India's case, we know, okay, LPG worked out fine for us. Okay. We were prepared in a way, and plus we had the political will that carried forward LPG into, say, growth and development to a certain extent. However, that's not the case with every country. For example, in Jamaica, yes, exactly, dance floor. What IMF did to us in the 90s, so we were able to, say, manage. But not every country is able to do that. So if you consider the example of, say, Jamaica, okay, the country in the Caribbean, okay, if you consider the example of Jamaica, now they went to IMF, okay, and IMF said, as usual that they do, they attach conditions to it, and they said that, well, you'll open your market. Fine, okay. Now Jamaica had a thriving dairy industry, like one of the best in that region, okay. One of the best in the region, because again they were focusing more on making sure that their industry was good enough. Once IMF came in, they said, well, open your industry, that there will be imports from other countries. So straight away, well, obviously Jamaica needed money, so they agreed. Now as soon as they did that, the whole Jamaican market was flooded by cheap imports that came from, say, the global north, essentially killing the whole thriving dairy industry of Jamaica in no time. Okay. So this is the problem of conditionality. Like I told you, this conditionality problem is what? Like one size fits all policy. It does not work well in every situation. Just because probably it worked well in India's case is no guarantee that it will work well in, say, Jamaica's case, which is why they paid the price with their dairy industry gone. At the same time, when you are decreasing your public spending, which means if you're decreasing the investment in, say, health, education, social service, one of the primary criticisms is that it affects women the most. Okay? That gender accounting is not done properly. That you're not taking into account the tangents that may evolve out of your policy that may be unfair to the women. So straight away what happens is, once you have cut your public spending, job opportunities go down. Women folk are the most vulnerable in this case. So they migrate to, say, outside countries, in transition to outside countries for better work, for better pay. And straight away when you do that, you are exposed to a lot of vulnerabilities. So another criticism of the IMF, the World Bank, is that they unfairly, their policies focus and do not serve the women. Yes, absolutely, dance floor. Self-resilience went away. The Jamaican example is a classic example of how one-size-fits-all policy of the IMF and the World Bank is not going to work out. You need customized policies for customized economies, You can't have this ki ek policy and everyone should do it. It's not fair. You can't do it in a small state. How can you do it throughout the world? Okay. So let's go forward now and take a look. So G7, those fellows who just recently met in Hiroshima. Remember, this meeting happened in Hiroshima where a prime minister went and literally gave them left, right and center, saying that you guys just are a talk shop, you don't do anything. Yes. So G7 is unable and unwilling to provide grant finance to secure the global public goods needed to mitigate and adapt to climate change. Obviously, how can they give the money that is needed? Plus, G7 is essentially the controlling power, guys. Like I told you, IMF and World Bank both, the biggest criticism is that they are not representation. There's no equitable representation. That they do the bidding of the Western powers. They are essentially a mouthpiece of the Western powers. Okay. So, and to address increasing poverty, G7 has been unable so far. Okay. Now you come to the Bridgetown Initiative. Exceptional topic, especially from the pre-point of view, guys. Okay. Expect some question, some point, somewhere, some tangent of this. So at least be aware of what the Bridgetown Initiative is. Okay. So it was proposed by the Barbados PM, the Prime Minister of Barbados, a set of core messages designed to reform the World Bank and IMF. Look at this. It is essentially looking to reform these two dark horses. Okay. World Bank and IMF, institutions set at the end of World War II and dominated by US and Europe. So this whole initiative that go ahead, reform the World Bank and IMF has come from a tiny state, a tiny country of Barbados, and they have received huge support. If you look at what they have said, you see that the French president, Emmanuel Macron, he said, yes, it absolutely makes sense that IMF and World Bank are again inherently undemocratic organizations. So, French have supported them, the Indian government has supported the whole initiative. So, Bridgetown Initiative is essentially to do with the reform of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Okay. So, let's go forward and now look at this particular quote by the Barbados PM, which should essentially tell you what the whole problem is. This quote is very, very important to understand the feeling. Okay. The world is running out of time to fix its international financial system that is broken. Okay. Outdated, infested with short-termism and downright unfair. You see, if you look at the statements now, guys, one thing I always suggest is after these big meetings are held, go to the website of the particular organization or the meeting and look at the outcome document. Okay. As UPSC civil service aspirants, you should focus on the primary text. Don't take anyone's word for it, not even mine. Okay. Go ahead, go to the website and have a look at the outcome document of each and every meeting that happens. And you will find that, say, in the G7 meeting that took place in Hiroshima, the Indian Prime Minister, he said a similar thing but about the United Nations Security Council reforms. He said that the United Nations Security Council is essentially now being reduced to just a talking shop, that there is only yap but no action. Now you have the Barbados PM who is making the same allegation at the international financial system. Why do you think this is happening? Essentially, the global south are now finding their voice. Okay, that almost close to 50, 60, 70 years have passed with status quo, and that has not served anyone well except the Western powers. They have only managed to consolidate their power. If they had actually done some work, you wouldn't be having this situation, guys. This particular situation would have never arisen, that 40% of the world's poorest people are at risk. Okay, in spite of all the supposedly good work IMF and World Bank have done. Which is why there is a cry for change. Okay, that you have played with the global south enough, and now it's time you go ahead and reform yourself under the Bridgetown initiative. Okay. So, too many countries are being prevented from fighting the climate crisis and from creating decent opportunities for billions of people. The two focus areas, guys, one is climate financing and the other is poverty. Okay, the two thrust areas. So, if you want to draft your answer for the mains, make sure that you compulsorily include both of these when you talk about the reforms of the banks, that they have failed to address these two issues. In addition, you talk about the underrepresentation. In addition, you talk about the one-size-fits-all policy, the Jamaican example. See how you are making fodder points for your main answers? Okay. Which is why outcome-based learning is very important. You don't just listen to a monologue. Bhuvan's man ki baat nahi sunna hai aapko yahan pe. You are going to have actionable points that you will listen in the use in the examination. Okay. If countries cannot access the finance they need at the rates they can afford, the world will lose the battle, not just the countries. What are they talking about? That the rates, the rate of interest, debt servicing. If IMF is giving you money, eventually you will have to return the money. Eventually, for that you will have to cut down your public spending. The moment you do that, straight away you are putting your population in jeopardy. Okay. So, social capital is gone, public health, education, all of that is gone. So, debt servicing needs to include the aspirations of the people. You can't just look at it from a transactional point of view, that I am giving you 100 rupees with interest, you give me 125. It's not that simple. Okay. So, which is why this quote is of primary importance, guys. Have a look at the depth of the quote. What is good for the north is good for the south, east and west. Essentially, that you have to get out of that west-centric mindset. The major accusation against all of these organizations is what? In fact, if you look at the shareholding pattern, we'll look at it in the next slide. The shareholding pattern of these banks, okay, it is so mismatched, you know. It is like, who came up with that idea firstly? What was the point of that idea? That African countries, close to 23 African countries, they do not have representation on the board, on the board of IMF and World Bank. Essentially, their representation is taken care of by the European masters. Imagine this happening in the year 2023. So again, reforms are needed. You need to give the African countries their voice. Who is a white man to speak on behalf of an African man? Not necessary. Okay. So the major issues now, shareholding pattern. Yes, this is to be known. In the World Bank, Switzerland is the executive director responsible for, look at these, Uzbekistan, Canada, for Jamaica. So Canada is taking care of Jamaican viewpoint and Uzbekistan is taking care of Switzerland. Look at this. Why can't the Uzbeks have their own person? Why can't the Jamaicans have their own person? Shareholding pattern is inherently undemocratic. Okay. It is not inclusive. Okay. Small European countries have seats, but 23 African countries share a seat. Okay. What sense? How is this assumption true that Europe is better than Africa? On what ground? Okay. Straight away, question, why is this happening? How is this fair? We talk about, as UPSC aspirants, all of you talk about equitable distribution, inclusive growth, development, that you should take the voice of everyone along. As administrators, you will be expected to do that. So obviously that question should come up in your mind. What is the sense behind the shareholding pattern? Okay. Attempts to make the Eurocentric definition of world a part of the conversation, capitalizing the institutions, are rebuffed, impractical. So even if you go ahead and tell them that go ahead, You are not focusing on the whole world. Your whole outlook is just towards the Western world. No. Same thing you see in the United Nations Security Council also. How flimsy reasons will be put to essentially deprive you of your chance. In the United Nations Security Council discussion, they say, you know what, we do not know what are fair democracies. Which countries are fair? How do we know that they will not replicate, say, what Russia has done? Okay. So, this is the problem. This whataboutery. Do you understand this whataboutery? Wherein you don't answer a question with an answer, but in fact answer it with another question. Or change the goalpost and then just completely say, okay, this is my point of view. No. Answer the question. Okay. So, this is again not the way that it is to be done. Okay. Risk factor now. Risk assessments of rich country dominated multilateral development bank boards are heavily influenced by credit rating agencies. CRISIL and all of that. Moody's, Finch. You must have heard of these names. Finch and Moody. They'll be giving out these particular AA. This country is here, this country is BB. They'll be saying all of that. So, if you are going to assess the risk of particular countries based on this, well then they need to be impartial. They need to be doing an impartial job altogether. Are they doing? No. Okay. Which give the greatest weight to per capita income in their country. So, when you have per capita income which is given the highest priority, okay, straight away you know that us, population, high, which means per capita income will be lower than say a country in the European Union. So, for them, our risk is higher than say a country like Greece, which might be going to default. What sense? Okay. So, ergo, the poorer a nation, the riskier it is. Makes no sense, no? Like when I was studying about this, in fact, I have read about this thoroughly and I was like, what was the logic? You know, I'm trying to understand the rationale here. The only thing that I can justify why they did this is to maintain the concentration of power in select few hands. That the moment you change this per capita income, moment you change this to something else, you will see that countries like China, India, Brazil, South Africa, all of these, they will come up straight away. They will have a large say. But the moment you make population as a particular criteria for understanding whether a country is riskier or not, well, Global South will always be at a disadvantage. The population, in fact, if you have seen, Global South holds the majority of the population. Global North has not a lot of the population. Okay. Affordability. Affordability of the debt that you get. Okay. So, India opposed the use of special drawing rights. What are SDR, guys? What is drawing rights? Special drawing rights? Okay, we'll quickly note this down because this is important from the prelims point of view. So, you should know about this. So, just make a note if you're writing it down. Just make a note very quickly. Okay, for about SDRs. Special drawing rights. Please write this down very quickly. They are basically an artificial currency. Okay, it's an artificial currency. All right. It's an artificial currency basically created by the IMF, and IMF uses them for internal accounting purpose. Okay. Write this down. If you're writing this down, make sure you take a note of this. So, special drawing rights are artificial currency instruments that are created by the IMF, and they essentially use them for internal accounting purpose. Okay. And so, the value of SDR, no, it has 5 particular currencies that are a part of the special drawing rights. Can you guess what are the 5 particular currencies? One is obviously dollar. Okay. Second will be which one? Imagine if IMF and World Bank, I've told you, one is dominated by the Americans, one by the Europeans. If dollar is there, it means euro will be there. You can't have dollar, euro and leave out say yen. Okay. So, yen will be there. Okay. Thereafter, the Chinese currency, what is it called? Yuan. Chinese yuan will be there. Right. And finally, the British pound. So, these 5 are there. Note this down. The US dollar, the European Union's currency, okay, the euro, I think it's called the euro, Okay, then you have the Japanese yen, okay, the Chinese yuan, and finally the British pound. So these 5 currencies form a part of the SDR weighted pool. Please make a note of this, guys. Extremely important from the prelims point of view. Facts. You have to know facts for prelims. The analysis of why this is there, what should be changed will come later. Okay. So if you look at how it's arranged, you will see that US dollar comes first, thereafter comes euro, thereafter comes yuan, thereafter comes yen, thereafter comes pound. This is the weight functions. Okay. So this is given the highest weighted average, thereafter followed by the euro, then the yuan, then yen, then pound. Now look at this whole list that I have for you. Straight away you realize that the currency is reflective of the country's own dominance. Okay. Straight away you will realize this is how common sense works, guys. America, the biggest power right now, highest weighted average. European Union, because they essentially control the IMF, they will be number 2. You can't leave out the Chinese because they will eat you alive. So number 3 is China. Next, Japan, and then finally the Brits, British pound, because obviously they are on a downward slope. There is no point. So these 5 countries form the weighted average, the weighted average of the special drawing rights. Okay. Now what is the point of special drawing rights? What could be the point of special drawing rights? Can someone let me know? Huh? What happens with the special drawing rights? So essentially this SDR, it provides the basis for calculating the interest rate. Okay. So to member countries, when you're giving out loans, the interest rate is calculated by the SDR. Okay. Fine. Just a second. All right. Very important topic for the prelims and the mains, guys. Have a look at this and please make sure that you're thorough with the special drawing rights. Okay. So India opposed the use of SDR to lend money to poor countries. India was like, no, why are you giving them loan when essentially you should be giving them a grant? Because loan you have to pay back, but grant you don't have to pay back. Grant essentially can be, again, done in a long-term basis. Loan will have a certain interest rate unless it is a zero interest rate loan. Okay. At the same time, look at few examples. If you have followed the loss and damage class that we did a couple of weeks ago, I spoke to you about the example of Mozambique. Okay. Mozambique was hit by a major cyclone. Okay. Again, it's a poor country, LDC, country in the African continent. So when it was hit by a cyclone, anyways they don't have money to rebuild. Anyways they don't have money to invest in, say, public health, insurance, capital, all of that. So when the cyclone came, it hit everything. It flattened everything on its path. Now Mozambique went to the IMF saying, hey, give us money. We need to rebuild. Okay, we have been hit by this particular cyclone. IMF in all its wisdom said, no, we'll not give you a grant, we'll give you a loan. And initially that also they were charging at some exorbitant interest rate. Okay. So imagine this now, that IMF in all its wisdom decides that a poor country like Mozambique, just to rebuild their country after they have been hit by a cyclone, should be paying some X amount of interest rate. What sense does it make? Eventually there was an international outcry. In fact, if you look at the Hindu coverage of that time, which was roughly last year, you will see how IMF was being slapped left, right and center. Okay, that how dare you go ahead and ask money from Mozambique and ask them to pay back that debt servicing at such exorbitant rates. What sense does it make? Eventually, IMF capitulated and they, I think, extended it to 0% interest rate. Still not giving a grant, by the way. It's a loan, but 0% interest rate. So you see, this is the problem, that it is not fair. It's just not empathetic enough. It refuses to acknowledge that different countries have different economic realities. Okay. So India quite rightly wanted to know why SDR loans and not grants were being provided to help poor countries buy vaccines and overcome economic crises. Imagine this, in coronavirus pandemic, poor countries, when they went ahead to buy all these fancy vaccines that were launched by the West, The West was like, we'll charge you exactly per vial of vaccine. Yeah, India had its own vaccine Maitri policy, where we went ahead and gave free vaccines to these countries. So at that time, the countries were asked essentially to buy the vaccines. There was no help again offered by the World Bank and IMF that go ahead, spend your own money, get the medicine for your people. Again, not fair, not just, not equitable at all. Just the fact that, say, a certain country U, has the know-how to make a vaccine, whereas Mozambique cannot make a vaccine. So, why are you unnecessarily punishing them for it? Okay. And is there an opportunity in every crisis? No. Some crises are bigger than opportunities. You should come together and stand in spite of a crisis. But no, IMF and World Bank will not look at that. There is no moral here. It is all simply economics at play. Okay. So let's go forward now. The myopic Western mindset. Myopic is short-sighted. Okay, short-sighted Western mindset. So the rich countries and northern interlocutors in the London-Washington policy ecosystem. Why I've used this? Because London is to do with IMF, Washington is to do with World Bank. So essentially these two organizations are unwilling or unable to frame these questions as central to making progress. That they are just not alive enough, seized enough of the changing times. Have you heard that song by, I think, Bob Dylan? The times are a-changing. Yeah. This is the thing with the global south. The times are changing now. Okay. And so no longer can you go ahead with the same status quo that has existed for say 50, 60, 70 years. That's not going to work out. Okay. Grants are not on the table. Greater risk appetite is not on the table. See. Why greater risk appetite? Because for them, the country with a higher population has more risk. Huh? What sense? What sense? Okay. They will not give grants. They will give loans. Again, what sense? Yes. Reforming an archaic colonial governance system is again not on the table. Until the Barbados PM said that the Bridgetown Initiative, okay, when she came up with the Bridgetown Initiative, only then this topic gained traction, guys. Until then, they were not even considering it. Okay. Instead, there is a take it or leave it attitude. You see why China comes ahead and gives easy loans now, guys. We all cry hoarse, no, oh, China is playing wolf warrior and debt trap diplomacy. Oh. Well, it is to do with the fact that these fellows can't get their house in order. That they have created a vacuum themselves. It's a problem created by these people only. China has just filled in like any country would. So why blame China? Okay. So this take it or leave it attitude, that we will give you money, but then you have to follow this or else we will not give you money. China is like, you take your money, we'll see it later. Obviously, a poor country will go towards China. No? It's just common sense. Yeah. So there is a take it or leave it attitude to expanding the capital base, which is not conducive to doing business. That they are, again, just not flexible enough. This one-size-fits-all policy exists for them in their mindset. Everything is to be seen from the Western lens. How long? Eventually, it will be seen from the Chinese lens now. Okay. But there will be no compromise on addressing the central questions that emerging and developing economies have on multilateral reform. In spite of all of this, they still refuse to address the crux of the issue. Okay. So you'll realize how linked the topic is. Eventually, the foreign policy of a country or the foreign outlook of a country is relatively determined by the economic power it has. And so you see that Western countries now, with the decline that they are seeing in the face of the rise of China, unless and until they go ahead and reform the IMF and the World Bank, okay, unless they go ahead and reform this, you will see that the AIIB, the Chinese-backed bank, I'm sure you must be aware of it, the AIIB, yes. So this will gain more relevance, guys. This will become bigger. So this is going to happen. This is just a part, the tip of the iceberg. Okay. Let's go forward and have a look now what should be done. Make a note of this slide because this slide has all the fodder material for your mains. Each and every line you can in fact quote this and use in the mains or at least have an idea of what is written here. Okay. Provide immediate liquidity support, including rechanneling of unused SDR through IMF and multilateral development banks. Immediate support is needed. Some countries are actually facing on the brink of debt crisis. So that is needed ASAP. That you need to have capital pushed out to these countries. Give them money. Okay. Restore debt sustainability today and support countries in restructuring their debt. Okay. Don't have these high exorbitant rates of interest and this short payment period times, that you have to pay back in 25 years for an amount of say whatever amount. It's not possible. How will they do that? Imagine Pakistan's example only, the biggest example that you can understand here. Their political stability is zero. Economy is gone. Okay. Exports gone. Human rights gone. Nothing is there essentially. And for them to sustain and survive, they will have to take hard decisions, which the IMF will shove down their throats, which means public spending will be low. People again will be the most threatened by this whole maneuver. And so if Pakistan is unable to invest in their people, how will it come up as an economy? Because you need to invest in social capital. So again, the country is going to be debt reservicing for a large number of years. Or the second option it has is that go hug China, become best friends with them, take their money and eventually become China part 2. These are the only two options that country has. So this is why it's needed. Dramatically increase official sector development, okay? Especially for SDGs. Like Agenda 2030 now. You see next year when the Summit of the Future is held, the United Nations Summit of the Future, if you're not aware, it's a massive summit that is going to be held next year, wherein they will take a stock taking of how far we have reached in terms of Agenda 2030. And the fear is that unfair targeting of the global south will happen because when you look at say the recent past, you have had coronavirus pandemic, you have had geopolitical tensions between Ukraine and Russia, global economy is on a slowdown, countries don't have money, and SDGs are not going to be reached or achieved free of cost. It can't happen. You need money to do all of this. So where will the money come from? So they should do this. IMF and World Bank essentially should fill in right now. Okay. Private sector investment in the green transformation. Climate financing, guys. Whatever you understand about climate financing, please understand that IMF and World Bank haven't done enough. Okay, that in investment in green technology and transfer of tech, in building capacity not just of the individual or community but also the country. You need money for that. Okay. Transform the governance. Like I told you, no longer should a European sit as the chief of the IMF. Look at their history. Go ahead today. After the class ends, go to IMF list of chairmen or the presidents that they have. Each and every one is of European origin. Go and look at the World Bank director. Each and every one is an American citizen. How is it going to work out? For how long will you carry on this charade? Okay. Create an international trade system that supports global green and just transformations. Okay, this is fine. So do you understand that it's a problem of underrepresentation, it's a problem of exorbitant interest rates, it's a problem of not being inclusive, it's a problem of not investing in the right technology, not enabling the global south to be agents of change rather than just using them for exploitation purpose. Okay. So this is the major criticism. Please make sure you take a note of this, guys. Extreme. If you want, take a screenshot or else join the Telegram channel and I'll be sharing this around noon. Have a look at this whole slide for yourself. Okay. So before we go forward, guys, because I have another just 7 minutes left. So very quickly, the last chance for you to join me for your UPSC 2024 preparation, especially in English language. Okay. This prep is going to be the complete package that you need. Okay. You don't need to buy another book after you signed up for this. So P2I, prelims, you have around 1,000 hours of classes online where faculty, some of the best faculty of the country will be mentoring you. Once the prelims are over, those who are successful, well, you join us here in this very building, okay, in New Delhi, where we take care of each and everything. All you need to do is study for whatever number of hours. So you join us here, boarding, lodging, food, everything free. Thereafter, interview, we take you to our IAS, IPS, IFS panel. They grill you, they mold you. They make sure that you transition from, say, an out of college graduate or someone who hasn't got a job for 2-3 years, to make sure that you have a personality that reflects you have officer-like qualities, that you can speak with confidence, that you can answer with analysis rather than answering with bias like the WhatsApp crowd. Okay, so make sure you join me for this and use this code, guys, because that will enable you to take a discount of around close to 40,000 rupees. 29,999 is the price point. And again, if you do a comparative analysis of, say, the rest of the coaching institutions and how much they are charging you, yeah, you will have to sell probably your left lung to get into those institutions. 1 lakh rupees, 2 lakh rupees, 3 lakh rupees, some random amount they'll be charging. Makes no sense. UPSC preparation shouldn't threaten your family's financial security. Okay, that's not desirable nor expected. So join us for this, 29,000. And last evening I was told that we have just single digit seats left. Okay, I don't think how many seats, but the person told me we have single digit seats left. So go ahead, use this code BA Live. Thank you, Bulbul, for joining. I'll see you. I'll see you for that. Our orientation, Bulbul, is starting on the 19th, 6 p.m. Okay, I'm sure you'll receive a mail with all the details. So for those of you who are interested, join us. Okay, it's for serious candidates. It's for those candidates who are actually in this for the long run, right? You don't want to come to New Delhi, make friends in old Rajendra Nagar, Mukherjee Nagar. Plus, you must have seen yesterday, Mukherjee Nagar, there was a huge fire. There's no sense, studying like cattle in a truck. You need peace of mind. You need comfort to study for this. So come join us and use the code BA Live. Fine. Let's go to SAF now, the sustainable aviation fuel. Okay. Normally, right now that in our aviation or in our aircrafts, you use aviation turbine fuel. ATF is used. Yes. So the problem with that is it's highly polluting. Okay. That if you have to go from, say, position X, place X to place Y, your aircraft is going to be emitting all of these. Please make a note of these. UPSC asks these questions in prelims. What are the major pollutants? Previous year questions you must have seen. Students often get confused because there are so many chemicals there. Kaun sa hai, kaun sa nahi hai. So, carbon dioxide, nitrous gases, water vapor, soot, sulfate, and other particles. Total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 pollutants that you need to remember. Make a note of these, guys. I'm telling you, each and every slide here is well thought out. There is information abundance in these slides. Okay. So 6 pollutants, and how do they impact the climate? Well, ozone formation, decrease in methane, sun screening, creation of cirrostratus clouds, and contrails. What are contrails? Next time you see an aircraft flying at a high distance, especially those who are at a higher distance, the 35,000 feet ones. On a clear day, if you are sitting in your town, your village, your city, have a look at a flight that is going right at the top. You will see it emits a white trail right behind it. Okay, it looks like a cloud, long patla cloud. So that is a contrail. Okay, and contrail, essentially research is being done there, and to find out what effect does it have on that particular height, because eventually it's being emitted by the airline. No, so the initial research indicates that again it's disastrous. So contrails also it creates. So any aircraft, any airline that you take. Now, most of the airlines nowadays claim that, oh, our airline is sustainable. Green flights, yes, it is like oxymoron, there's no truth in that. Zero truth. Okay. So look at this now. Sustainable aviation fuel. So the industry has said that, well, go ahead, we'll transition from aviation turbine fuel and we'll go into sustainable aviation fuel. How is that to be made? You use cooking oil, forestry waste, feedstock. 3 things you can use, essentially non-edible and edible both. Okay, non-edible and edible both you use. You create sustainable aviation fuel. You blend it with the current jet fuel, the aviation turbine fuel, and then you put it in your aircraft. Sounds very simple, no? Nothing you have to do. But then it is extremely convoluted again. The problem arises where? Here itself. That you are essentially channeling, say, feedstock, or you are channeling, say, used cooking oil and making fuel, which means that there will be changes in the way land management occurs. That as farmers, they will probably get, say, more money from the airline companies. Okay. So which means food security will be threatened, right? So that is the problem. And right now, at this present moment also, the price of sustainable aviation fuel is way higher than aviation turbine fuel. So scalability is not possible. Okay, it's extremely costly. And as airlines, they are not into charity business. It's a profit-making entity for them. So they refuse to transition. It has to be made cheaper if it has to become scalable. So again, research is being done extensively on this. We'll just take a look at the kind of non-edible and edible oils. Both can be used for sustainable aviation fuel. Okay. So you have, say, palm stearin, sapum oil, fatty acid distillates, jatropha, karanja, all of these. You must have heard of all of these. Okay. So make a note of these. These are the essential ones. It reduces GHG emissions, improves air quality, enhances energy security, creates jobs, promotes sustainable development. All of this from SAF, the Sustainable Aviation Fuel. Obviously, if it's sustainable, which means it has long-term use. Okay. And biofuel for aviation can be mixed. Like I told you, blending happens, guys. It's just not that you straight away put SAF in the aircraft and then it'll start flying. No. You need to blend it to a certain extent with the current fuel that is being used. And only what you're looking at is essentially starting from a lower SAF component to the whole blend and then increasing it slowly to receive that threshold where the efficiency of emissions is the best. Okay. This is the way forward that is being thought out. Sustainable aviation fuel is extremely important from the GS3 point of paper, the environment paper. You will be asked a question for sure. Expect a question on SAF or the environmental cost of transportation somewhere. Okay. Okay. All right. SAF is done, and two programs. The CORSIA program, which is being done by the ICAO, I believe. The International Civil Aviation Organization. They are looking to offset this particular carbon. Okay. So CORSIA requires offset any emissions above 2020 levels and encourages the use of sustainable aviation fuel to reduce emissions. So this is being done by the ICAO. Okay, make sure you know the organization. And Clean Skies for Tomorrow is by the World Economic Forum. You often find this in your prelims questions, no? This initiative is by whom? World Bank, WEF, IUCN, and one more option. And more often than not, students never consider WEF. The same fellows who do the Davos, the Davos summit, you must have heard of it. Imagine this, no? They're talking about clean skies for tomorrow. And then every year they'll go, all of them, hundreds of them will fly onto Davos in their private jets, emitting all of that I told you, and then claim that we are working for a cleaner sky for tomorrow. Okay, we'll buy that also. The European Union has established blending targets. Okay. 63 SAF blending. Like I told you, they'll start from lower. SAF will be lower, ATF will be higher. But the goal is eventually to change this, reduce this as far as possible, and then gain that critical threshold where your emissions are the minimum possible. Okay. So that should be it, I believe. Make sure you take a note of this SAF. It's extremely important, extremely important. Alright guys, so that completes the two topics for today, the reform of the multilateral development banks as well as the SAF. Again, if you have any particular doubts, any particular resolution, grievance, or you would like some further clarification on the P2I batch that is starting on the 19th, may I suggest firstly, if you are signing up, use the code BALIVE because that makes sure that you get an offer of 40,000 rupees. Okay, and 40,000 rupees is a huge amount of money. Okay, it's for half the Indians, in fact more than half the Indians, it's a huge amount of money. So make sure that you sign up for this. If you have any particular questions that you would like me to address vis-a-vis the topic we discussed today, or any particular problem that you're facing in your preparation, join me in this Telegram channel, or if you would want, well, you can reach out to me at this particular ID, bhuvan.jha@studyIQ.com, and I'll be more than happy to help you there. Because eventually, the whole point of this exercise is that you should be enabled, you should be comfortable, your doubts should be resolved, and that you should be completely focused on the examination. Okay, especially if you consider this year's paper. It must have come as a rude shock to many of you. To most faculty also, especially paper 2, it was a rude shock. Yes. So for the P2I, the CSAT course is included, by the way. Okay. You don't have to pay extra for anything. Like I told you, everything from prelims up until you go in front of the interview board here in Shah Jahan Road, all will be taken care of. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Molly Shri. Thank you. You are very kind with your feedback. Thank you. Thanks. So, we are coming to the end of this particular class. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., we'll discuss another set of topics. Meanwhile, make sure you join me in my Telegram channel. Subscribe to this channel, guys. StudyIQ IAS English. It'll be a game changer for your preparation. Some of the content that is lined up in the days to come, it's going to absolutely benefit you. It'll supplement your studies that you're doing. Okay. So, subscribe to this channel and join me tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. as we take a look at a range of other topics, analysis, more importantly, how to analyze the topic. Eventually in the mains, that's what you're going to do. Okay? Okay, fine. Thank you. Have a good day, everyone. Study well, be safe. I shall see you all tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Bye.